Hello friends. So about 2 months have passed since I spoke about my personal situation and the future of this channel for the last time. And in these last 8 weeks, which by the way have been a really great time for me personally, all the episodes were filmed and produced here in Cologne rather than in the old shop. And as some of you might have guessed already, I will stay here in Cologne longer than I originally planned. This week, however, I spent almost all of my time back in the old shop, and I will continue to be there for a large portion of the time in November and December as well. So the next half year or so will still remain something of a transitional period in which I will spend some of my time here in Cologne and some of my time back in the old shop in East Westphalia. And I hope that I will be able to end this transitional period at some point in the first half of 2017 by hopefully finding a better and more suited workshop space somewhere in the vicinity of Cologne. But until then, I will keep on making videos here and in the old workshop. And while over the last 8 weeks I spent the majority of my time here in Cologne, I actually was back at the old shop in this week and will continue to be there a lot in November and December. And part of what I did this week is basically to clean up and streamline the old place so that it will be eventually much easier for me to move out. So this mess that I'm cleaning up here is kind of a combination of stuff that was already lying around in this house and a lot of garbage and material that has piled up by the constant need of producing new videos that all the time require me to buy new equipment and new stuff, and a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that you never really see. But in addition to this rather boring and grueling part of the work that I did here over the course of this week, there is also another thing, a quite big surprise one might say, that I haven't talked about yet at all. So for the last 2 years or so, this 20-year-old green Opel Corsa B has been a trusty companion of myself personally and of this channel as a whole, and you have seen lots of repair videos on this car in the past. But now I guess it's eventually time to say goodbye to this car, and I will bring this car to my friend who runs a local car dealership in 1 or 2 weeks or so, and he will sell it for me for whatever little money it is still worth. So just a couple of weeks back I had bought this old Volvo 740 as a replacement for the Opel, and I already had put a lot of work and money into that project and had published some videos about that when a French viewer contacted me and told me that I shouldn't have bought that car in the first place because he was willing to give me his Subaru Legacy GX, which you can see here, for free. And believe it or not, he really brought it all the way from Paris, France to my humble abode here in East Westphalia, and he didn't ask for anything. So this was really an incredible gift, and I don't even know what to say. As you can see by the license plates, I already registered this car, so I'm now really driving it already. And it also passed the German general inspection with flying colors and doesn't seem to have any big issues at all. And since the Opel has had more and more problems over the course of the last months, this is really a gift from heaven, and I'm really glad that I can use this car as my daily driver now. And the future will have to show if I can justify keeping the Volvo 740 maybe as a project car to repair it and make videos about while I'm simply driving the Subaru. But I can't make any promises here because the situation has changed under these circumstances, of course, and I will have to see if I can afford to keep the Volvo. And as if giving me this car for free wouldn't have been more than you could possibly ask for already, I also got a set of free winter tires on top of that. And because the winter is approaching quickly here in Germany, I removed the summer tires, which allowed me to take a look at the brakes and also at the pneumatic suspension of this car. And maybe you can also see here already that this car has 4-wheel drive, and you can guess that it is much more complicated in many aspects than what I had to deal with before. So here I put on the winter tires, and you can see that unfortunately the rims on these tires are a little more corroded than on the summer tires, but I guess that I will just have to live with that. So as I mentioned before, the car has just passed the general inspection without any problems, but maybe there are some things that the guys at the inspection shop just didn't see. So let's take a look under the hood and after that under the car, and then you guys can tell me in the comment section if you saw something suspicious or that in your opinion or experience, if you know a little bit about Subarus, has to be fixed or should be fixed in the future. So let's get right into that. So one thing that I notice here is that there is a little bit of motor oil on the outside of this part, and I think that this gasket probably has to be replaced at some point. And here you have a bolt that obviously came loose by the vibrations caused by the engine, I guess. So let's tighten this bolt again, and I hope that this didn't happen all over the car. Next I checked the dipstick, also the radiator coolant, the windshield wiper fluid, brake fluid, AC fluid and power steering fluid. And if at all, there's a little too much fluid on some of those reservoirs. But we already had checked that a couple of weeks ago and I have no real complaints here. So while I show you some more camera angles of the engine compartment here, let me give you some basic information about this particular vehicle. This car was manufactured in 2001 and it is a second generation Subaru Legacy GX with a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder boxer engine, as it's typical for Subaru cars, and I never had to deal with boxer engines before, to be honest. This car has 4-wheel drive and an automatic transmission, which is kind of rare in Germany, and this is the first time that I'm actually owning a car with automatic transmission, and I will have to get used to that first. Furthermore, this car was built in 01, but only first registered in 03, and I guess regularly driven until 2015, so it had about 12 years on the road. And as I stated before, 133,000 kilometers or 83,000 miles on the odometer, which makes it kind of a new car, at least by my standards. So I'm now obviously under the car and we can take a brief and superficial look at what we're seeing here, and that's because I just didn't have the time yet to learn a lot about this car and get into it and so on. So as you can see here, there is some rust at the suspension and other parts, but I don't see anything too critical. And you can see that there are these insulating sheets all over the exhaust pipes yet. You remember maybe that at the Volvo that is like 11 years older, those things were completely rusted off. And I have now turned the car around so that we can take a look at the muffler right here. And you can see that there's also a lot of corrosion on the outer sheet here on the muffler and also on the exhaust pipe leading from the muffler under the car. and I guess that within the next year or so I will probably have to install a new exhaust system. Well, but as before, just take a look at this footage here and leave a comment below if you see anything important that I haven't talked about. And I guess that we will go into more detail with this car in the future if there should be any bigger issues. But let's just take her for a spin then. So here you can see some footage of me driving through the forests of rural East Westphalia, but I took this car to Cologne by now and I drove it for around 250 kilometers, and I also pushed the car a little bit to see how fast I can go, and at least for a couple of minutes I drove around 200 kilometers per hour. I do not recommend to drive a car so fast, but I was really most of the time driving slower, but then continually going a little faster and see how the engine reacts and how the transmission reacts and so on. And I really can't complain about the car. It's nice to be not the slowest person on the highway for once. But of course, the fuel consumption could be potentially an issue. For the 250 kilometers, more than half of the tank was emptied, and that will cost me about 35 euros at the moment. So one trip to Cologne, 35 euros, and then again for a trip back. So that's not really cheap, and you can drive the Corsa for less than that, but that's only interesting if you don't take into account how long you actually need and what kind of driving comfort you have and so on. So we'll have to see if that is an issue in the future. And there are also two little faults that I found while driving the car. The first one is that when you shift into reverse, most of the time there's a little buzzer or loudspeaker in the back of the car that will just start buzzing as if, warning for an obstacle behind you or something like that. And I guess that's kind of faulty and will be repaired. Maybe one of you knows about this thing and can say something about it in the comment section. And the second one is that with the car came this onboard diagnostics device here, and sometimes there will be a little yellow light indicating an electronics problem, and it gives you this alert here, which has to do with the NOx sensor. And well, the viewer who gave me this car also gave me a replacement NOx sensor, and maybe I will install that at some point in the future. Do you think that this is a big problem? Because none of the cars that I drove so far had these NOx sensors at all, so I don't really know all that much about it. Well, but that's it so far, and well, I guess you will see more about this car in future episodes, and I hope that you like this little video.